All right then. You're muted.
Sorry, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the finale of the Get to Know series put together by the Comms Avenue. Over the last 2 weeks, we have had enlightening conversations from East Africa and West Africa, and that is from communications professionals from these regions. Today, we'll be speaking with professionals from South Africa and Zimbabwe. Thank you again for joining this session, Mildred, Domile, and Grace. We look forward to having an amazing time. The floor is open. Please feel free to introduce yourselves.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Mildred, and I'm based in South Africa. I've been in the communications industry for over 12 years now. And my main specialty is in the B2B space, but I've worked across B2C. I've worked with exciting clients from all over the world, the United States, the UK, including many regions in Africa as well, including Ghana and Nigeria. And I'm very excited to be here and to just, chat to everybody, learn a few things myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mildred.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grace Maveja. I'm based in Harare, Zimbabwe. I have 12 years in the communications industry, and my focus mainly is development communications because I've been working in the non-governmental organizations. So basically based in Zimbabwe. That's my experience, is mainly based in Zimbabwe. I'm excited to be here to share my experiences as well as to learn from others how they are doing their work across the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dumile Mlambo. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm currently the Public Relations Manager for the South African Medical Research Council, SAMRC. And basically, I've got, I think, almost 10 years in the industry. Focusing mainly on corporate communications, obviously. And yeah, I've got experience in both public sector and higher education sector, having worked in 3 different universities in communication space. And the past 3 years I've been in government entity, the SAMRC, which is one of the custodians of public health in South Africa. So essentially, we've been sort of in the forefront of the fight against COVID-19, so to speak. So yeah, I'm excited to be here, and it's an honor, man, to be selected to be part of the speakers in this, important platform that I think it's something that we've been needing as communicators to touch base with our peers in different African countries, just to get a sense of how things are done on the other side. And just to learn, 1 or 2 things from our colleagues. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and I'm ready to learn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dumile. Now we'll jump right into the conversations. Our very first question is, how did you begin your career in communications? So we can start with Grace.
Thank you. So for me, I wanted to be a social worker. That was my first preference. I wanted to do social work, and communications was a second option. So I ended up studying media studies at a local university. That's how I got into communication. That's how I started my path into communications. And after my studies, I then worked for in a newspaper, like in a newsroom for a year, and I got all the experience, the exposure of being a journalist. And I said, but I really want to be in to save lives, to be in the development sector. Then I then joined a local NGO as a graduate intern in communications. That's where I got all the experience. That's where I started to network. That's where I started to nurture my skills in development communications. And I liked it. And thereafter, opportunities started to come, getting new opportunities in a local NGO as a communications officer. And after that, I joined an international organization, international non-governmental organizations, as a communications coordinator. There, I learned a lot, and especially for development communications. That opportunity nurtured my skills, opened my mind, and started to understand the real development communications, how to do campaigns, how to do media advocacy, advocating for empowerment of young people, fighting gender inequality. There was a lot, because when you are working for NGO, you get exposure to various contexts, and also those various contexts. As a communicator, you need to know all those things, and you need to be part of all those conversations. So I enjoyed doing it. And also one thing I really liked is doing campaigns, and also events management is something that I really liked. Thereafter, I then joined an international medical humanitarian organization, where I am now as the communications manager for Medecins Sans Frontiers. This is a different context slightly, because it's specifically humanitarian communications, but there is just it's a slight change, but it's all the same. So for me, I have gained a lot of communications to save lives, communications in development, communications for social change, as well as ensuring that when you do communications, it's not only for your organization to say, we just want to communicate. I've learned to say, why do you want to communicate? There is a reason, there is an objective to save lives. That is the main objective that I've been doing communications. That's where I am now. That's where I am now, and I'm looking forward to continue to grow in this space, and yes, do a lot of things in the communications industry in Zimbabwe and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. That's an amazing start into comms. I think that with, how growing up, you say, oh, I want to do this specific thing. And then you find out, oh, I can do this thing, but still merge it with something else I have interest in. And I think that that's what you've done with your interest in the development sector, as well as communications. You've been able to merge both things that you love. And I think that comms is one of the very few industries that allows people to be able to do that. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Grace. Mildred, would you like to tell us how you began your career in communications?
Absolutely. So I studied publishing when I was at school, and my start into the communications industry was also through a bit of journalism, because I worked in a magazine, partly writing and editing as well. So I've always had a can-do attitude, and I love learning. So there was an opportunity in the organization I was working. I'd never heard of PR, and they said, look, we're looking for someone who can write. And then I was like, yes, let me do it. I'll jump in, and then I'll learn the rest along the way. And that's how I fell into the sort of public relations space. But I found that my niche has really been in the B2B space. I love working around reputation, crisis management, really getting behind sort of issues management and that sort of thing. So that's the space that I love to play. But, like I say, I've always put my hand up for any initiatives, any campaigns, and it's really helped me sort of broaden my expertise. I worked on the Africa Cup of Nations, once before, where we did a campaign where we had to get kids from underprivileged areas in South Africa to go walk alongside the players when the tournament was hosted just before COVID. I've done exciting stuff like helping executives work at the World Economic Forum. So my experience has really been broad, and it's really been, it's impacted me. I've learned a lot from it. But yeah, I'd say my niche is definitely in the B2B space. Thank you.
Thanks, Mildred. That's amazing. Well, on to Dumile.
Thanks so much. Interesting journeys from my colleagues. I mean, I'm motivated as it is. Look, I would say maybe before I get to your question of how my comms journey began, if you don't mind, allow me to maybe take it back slightly to high school. You remember way back in the days where we used to be given those assignments on creative writing, where you'd be requested to do an essay on topics ranging from, I think they used to like the one on the day I will never forget, or tell us about your holidays. And I must say I enjoyed those quite a lot, and I nailed them. I must say, goodness, I enjoyed this and I nailed them. And I think I tried a bit of debating as well, but I was never good because I'm generally a shy person. But I think it was at that point where I realized that I'm actually loving this writing business. This is the space I want to be in. And the only thing I could link to that was the word journalism. And I didn't even know what really entails journalism except chasing stories. So I must say, part of the credit must go to my English teacher at the time, who said to me, look, you might want to look this direction. And that's typically where everything started for my BA Communications at Northwest University. I think that is where everything started, because what happened afterwards sort of contributed to my career journey. So when I was a student, I used to be a volunteer journalist for the campus newspaper. Would run around, cover stories on campus, and I was also a freelance writer for the university's marketing and communications department, where we would get paid per article published on the website. And so I was never really a stranger, in that department. And I must say, I think the fact that I was forever in that department, I think that is what led to them appointing me as a communication officer later on, to handle their digital mediums at the time. And it was simply because part of my what do you call it, the mini dissertation in honors, was around the use of websites and social media as tools, in potential students' choice of a higher education institution, where I used the same university as a case study. So in a way, they said, look, some of the recommendations that you have in your study, we would like to implement them. And one of those was to sort of investigate to sort of upscale their social media presence, to get a bit of traction from that. So I was appointed as a digital communications officer, and yeah, I think that is where everything started, and which is why if you check my career, half of it has been within higher education. So I moved from one campus to another, and then ultimately I joined the public health space where I am at the moment. So that's basically where things are at. But I've done quite a number of things in the process. Mildred mentioned the Confederations Cup. I was also a media volunteer in the Rustenburg host city, where we would work with journalists from across the world, to facilitate, prepare the conference, media conference centers, make sure we assist with accreditation of journalists. So it was quite interesting. So I've been, trying this thing for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. That's great, Dumile. There's a common thread I can draw across everyone's stories is you didn't exactly know the entire picture, but you had an idea of what it was you wanted to do. And as you started, it began to unfold. You began to see, oh, I could do this, oh, I could do that, and then you started doing those things. I find that most times when people don't have an idea of what it is they think they want to do or be, it's easy to stand still and wait till you have the idea. But the three of you were able to, start with something, and then with time you got clarity as to what it is you wanted to do. It became clearer. You began to get yourself involved in different things. And I think that that's really great. It just really shows that not everyone has a full-on plan, step-by-step guide as to how life is going to play out, but you work with what you have, and then you grow on from there. So thank you so much for sharing your stories. We're on to the next question, which is, what goals did you set for yourself at the start of your career? We can start with Mildred. What goals did you set for yourself at the start of your career?
I think as my careers unfolded, I've really told myself to learn as much as I can. I think that's how it's gotten me into the spaces that I've gotten into. I think when you have an open mind, and you say to yourself, like I said, when I got into communications, I didn't really have an idea of what communications is. So I said to myself, learn as much as you can. And I think as I grow, as I've found my niche in the space, I started my business in 2020 when the COVID pandemic hit. So my goal now is South Africa is quite a small market when it comes to communications, but it's a very competitive market. And you find that it's still being dominated by international players like your WPPs and that sort of thing. So my goal now, more than learning new things, is how do we Africans tell our African stories? How do we sort of grow in this market, take hold of this market, form partnerships in this market, because I believe we are stronger together than we are apart, and just pulling resources. So that's my goal, is to really grow my business and make sure that there are Africans telling African stories.
Thank you, Mildred. That's really good. On to Grace. What goals did you set for yourself at the start of your career?
So growing up, I think I was just a humanitarian, like at heart. Like I have that heart for saving lives, like for ensuring that people have a better life, but I was not practicing it. And so, at times you won't have a specified goal, but your career is shaped by your experiences, is shaped by your encounters in life. Then you say, that it's now when you're asking this to say, so my goal was just to save lives, to change lives, and also to contribute to social change through communication. That is my goal at the moment, because communication is a key to development. So my goal is to ensure that I contribute to development of people through communication. I want to see a change. I want to see the vulnerable communities and people, their lives changing, to have a positive change, to see their voices being heard beyond their communities, and all that can be done through communications. So I'm happy that I'm contributing to that, and that's my goal at the moment. And I'm happy that through my work in the communications, in the development communications, I'm contributing to it. I'm facilitating change in people's lives through communications. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so good, Grace. We're on to Domile.
Yeah, thank you so much. Look, I can't really say at the beginning I had a certain set of goals, with time frames, in fact, when I first discovered my my passion for communication and finally got an opportunity to set my foot in the industry, little did I know that one day I would be overseeing public relations activities of an organization with the caliber of the SMRC and the size, let alone speaking in a forum of this nature, with trailblazers, I mean leaders and trailblazers like yourself from across the African continent. But with that said, I've always known that ours is quite a dynamic field, with a wide range of functions, and professional responsibilities, which includes, for instance, media relations, public relations, crisis communication, and so forth. So I understood quite early in my career that, the field often requires, one to be flexible, one to be always, ready to raise their hand, and jump into, the deepest end. So, in order to position yourself as a well-rounded communication professional, I think it is important that you constantly try to reinvent yourself, through lifelong learning, and always hungry and yearning for new ways to grow and develop your own skills. So, and I mean that has always been and continues to be, something that drives me over the years. So I think the goal initially was to become this, well-rounded, indispensable communication professional. But I'm happy to say I've landed in a space where I think it talks to my values as a person. I'm in public health now, and essentially what I'm doing is public health communication, or you want to say science communication, which has a direct impact on people's lives. In fact, it saves lives. So I think that is a space that at the moment I want to grow myself within and continue doing. I think there's nothing that is fulfilling as knowing that your communication or the purpose of your communication essentially is to save lives. Because I can tell you now, I only realized when I joined this space that actually half of the time people don't know as much as we think they do, and I'll make an example. You might be sitting here thinking people know the symptoms of TB, and they actually don't, and let alone how to prevent TB, because half of these illnesses are actually preventable. And as a result, a lot of deaths could be prevented, so to speak. So I think I'm in a space where I'm happy with what I'm doing, because my communication efforts essentially to save lives because of the work that I do. My mind is really to share as much information as possible. And I've been doing that for the past 3 years, and I'm hoping to stick around for some time in that space, and until such time fate decides otherwise.
Okay, thanks, Dumile. Our next question for everyone is, for the three of you rather, is what are interesting stories and lessons from your experience working as a comms professional in your country, where you currently are? So in South Africa, what are your interesting stories and lessons from your experience working in South Africa, working in Zimbabwe?
I think what's exciting about South Africa, from my experience, is, like I said before, I think South Africa is a small market, and there's a lot of potential, but it's very, very competitive market. And I think we are still a little bit old school, is what I'm finding. Since I've joined the Comms Avenue, I've really realized that we're still very traditional in how we approach communications. We still really haven't taken hold of digital comms as much as we could, and really leverage that. We still see digital communications just sitting on social media platforms, and I don't think we've really explored that enough. And I think if you're working with especially in the B2B space, if you had to work with the banks or those sort of things, they still want to see themselves in a physical newspaper. And the world is changing so much. The younger generations are not about that. So it's really, how do you make sure you're telling stories and reaching the relevant people on the right platforms? And I think we really haven't gotten there. I mean, I can see it when we had our last elections as well. It's starting to come up, but I think there's a big opportunity in the digital space, and I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mildred. Grace, would you like to share interesting stories and lessons from your working in Zimbabwe?
Okay, thank you. So Zimbabwe is a very interesting context, especially for development communications. What's really interesting, especially in development communications, is like maybe when you're the communicator, you ask yourself, how am I going to get the story? And how am I going to ensure that people get the message? As well as to know why you are doing that. So communications, when you're doing communications, it's not like you'll be just seated in the office throughout. It's when you get to the hard to reach areas to get the story, to interact with the people, because you communicate for the benefit of the people, to save lives and all. So it is all about reaching the communities, interacting with them. And the most interesting aspect in doing all this is to listen. You need to have that you need to listen to the people. You need to, in order for you to get the story, you need to have that capability. So it is in Zimbabwe, you can travel to the communities, especially like considering what your organization is doing and where it is working in. That's where you travel and you get the story. So the most interesting part of all this is to say, so if I get the story, so what? What do I want to use the story for? It now gets back to my goal to say, to change lives, to save lives, and to ensure that you want to ensure that there is a social change. You want to foster social change. So it's all now about the dissemination of the messages, dissemination of the material that you have to say, you like, especially now with my job, we communicate on behalf of the patients, of the people, because I'm in my organization is on public health. We speak out on behalf of the people to say, this is the situation that they have, and we want their situation to change. So the most important thing is to say, when you are doing that, you are speaking out, you are doing all that, are you doing it with the confines of what is like, are you speaking with the confines of the laws within the land? So that you ensure that your message is heard, because you want to target the policymakers, you want to target all the different government entities. So you need to ensure that your message is not overbound. Also, you need to make sure that your message reach your audience. Who is your audience? Reach your audience, and make sure that there is change at the end, because in everything that you do in communicating, we want to see impact. So that is all about it. And I have realized that in communication, you need to be very agile, because the context, they change anytime. There can be an emergency, like maybe cyclone Idai, they can be COVID, they can be what. So as a communicator, you need to quickly think outside the box. How am I going to communicate in this incident? How am I going to communicate in this context? So in all that, you need to be agile, you need to be versatile, you need to think outside the box. Otherwise, the context within the country is very good, especially for development communications. You have the space to communicate, you have the space to advocate for change in people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. On to Dumile. Interesting stories and lessons from your experience working as a comms professional in South Africa.
No, thank you so much. I think maybe let me start by saying, and I think this is something that we all know. I mean, in this forum, is that we communicate for a purpose. I think that is communication 101. But I think what I've learned so far is that, you know, information dissemination on its own, or communication, you know, as a function. I think the sooner we realize that communication on its own is a service delivery issue, and therefore poor or lack of communication is equal to poor service delivery. I think the sooner we acknowledge that, the better. And like I said earlier, being in public health, I've realized that people don't know much. So as a result, if you don't communicate effectively, essentially you are doing the masses, injustice. You are not delivering the service. Now, in the age of misinformation and disinformation, where us as communication professionals, we are almost competing with the different voices, because there are people out there who have, massive communication machinery that are deliberately pushing wrong information. So as communication professionals, I think one of the lessons I've learned is that we have to always try to be a step ahead, difficult as it is, but we have to try to always be a step ahead, and make sure that our messaging across different platforms, such as social media, websites, media engagement, awareness events, and the likes, are coherent and simple, but most importantly, understood, in a jargon-free language. So I think that's one of the lessons. But I think lastly, to join this to a point that was made by Mildred earlier, I think South Africa, in terms of, I think we still, in the grips of the third and the fourth industrial revolution, which essentially means that as much as you want to keep up with the trends, and go digital full force, because of we're still struggling with the third and fourth industrial revolution, I think essentially what this means is that, some of your communication efforts or activities would still have to be conducted in the traditional way, the hard copy format, the newspaper format, because, we still have a market out there that consumes information in that fashion. And I mean, that said on its own, and I think this is something that cuts across not only South Africa, like I suppose the same applies to different other countries, is that as much as there's an opportunity within the traditional media, they are competing with the rise of digital media, which essentially leads to, and I don't know if this is the case in your country, but I think a lot of media houses now actually, shrinking and closing down because of obviously poor revenue, because big corporates don't see the value of advertising in newspapers anymore. They would rather go sponsored content through social media, which has an impact as it is. So I think also that is one thing that, as much as the value and power of traditional media, but also they are competing with, and that is something that should worry you as a communication professional who knows the value of traditional media. But I think there's an opportunity there as well to say it's a chance for you to make use of what I would call in-house media. That's where you leverage on your social media platforms. Make sure that your social media presence is there, and then you can get as much needed traction from it as possible. So I think those are some of the things that are happening now in the country. I suppose the same is happening with the different other countries in the African continent. But I can tell you now, the biggest thing is that we want to go digital, we want to go full force online, but the fourth industrial revolution, I don't think we are there yet.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Dubile. Here, my own experience here in Nigeria is, in as much as we also want to go digital, in the companies where I've worked and where I'm currently working, we find that we still need to have our communication go out through traditional media, because, and I think it also depends on who your audience is. So for example, I'm in the insurance industry, and yes, we're trying to go into the retail space with younger people, but we also still know that majority of our audience are people who are in the 40s, their 50s, 60s, and these are people who still read newspapers. These are people who still listen to radio. So it's being able to find that balance between the digital platforms and then the traditional media platforms. I think that some of these agencies, like the newspaper agencies, a lot of them are also going online. So you find that rather than just the hard copy of the newspapers, you see that a few of them also have e-versions where you could have monthly subscriptions or yearly subscriptions or things like that. But I found that for us, particularly in my own industry, we've had to balance both. So in as much as we want to do social media, and then, focus mainly on the website, we've still had to, go into newspapers and have ads run there, put out information there, because of the kind of audience that we cater to, as well. But thank you so much for sharing. It's quite interesting to know that, when you're having these issues with, and you're trying to have conversations with your management, it kind of seems like, oh no, this is the way it must be done, this is how we have to do it. And then, so for me, it's quite interesting to know that it's not just in Nigeria alone that we're having these sort of conversations. We're having them across other countries as well. So thank you so much for sharing.
I think maybe just to add to that, and I think, look, as much as we did the whole issue of digital and whatnot, I think the biggest enemy, and I think Mildred can attest to this as well, to say the biggest enemy here is also the data price, because you want to go digital as much as you can, but I mean, the people that you want to reach cannot even afford data for that data. And I don't know, I could be wrong, but the last time I checked, we are sitting with an impression that data is quite cheaper in countries like Nigeria. I don't know if that's true, but I mean, here in South Africa, look, whether you want to go website, you can do your bit as a communication professional, with your website coordinate and whatnot. Make sure your website is, mobile, mobile scalability, that you can go to the website on your phone. But I mean, to get to the website, it's a whole lot of data, which talks to the whole issue of the digital divide. We want to bridge the gap, but here's an enemy called data price. So that's also adding to a whole lot of challenges that we are facing. And it's really, one might say, it's not really our turf as comms professional, but that's a turf that we are operating within, which should worry us as comms professional.
Absolutely, Dumila. I think you spot on there, and I think as times move, there's digital offers so many opportunities to reach a wider variety of people. But yes, our data costs in South Africa are extremely high. And it really does cause a divide, because I think there are a lot of communications, especially in the space that Grace is playing in, or the space that Dumile is playing in, educating people. If we can do that in a way that is easy for people to access, without having to walk a distance to a shop or whatever, if they can have access, we're seeing there's a lot of penetration of mobiles on the continent, and it's the same in South Africa. It's growing. The penetration of sort of cheaper smartphones means we really are able to reach a wider variety of people. But data has been one of the niggles, I think, in our markets.
Okay, also to come in on that one, or on the issue of digital communications, I think I also concur with my colleagues that the issue of data is a very challenging issue. When you want to reach out to your audiences and they can't access the information because of data, but also the coming in of this the digital era that we are getting into. There is so much misinformation, there's so much disinformation. So as a communications person, you'll be fighting on fighting misinformation, and you just need to be so alert, especially on social media, on everywhere, just checking all the information. Are people getting the right information? But it's a very, very challenging era. It's a very challenging issue, especially the issue of misinformation, especially during the COVID period. You would be on your toes everywhere across the different social media sites, trying to find this. So it's something that is very challenging for communicators during this digital era.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think that's something that one really has to consider when you're making all your plans, because you don't want to go all the way and do all these amazing things, and then the people that you've created them for can't actually view them. So I think that's where there still needs to be that balance. In what way? Okay, so there's nothing you can actually do like directly to change to affect the data pricing, But in terms of getting that information across to them, you then begin to ask, how can we do this? Like Mildred had mentioned, so they don't have to, walk all the way to the stores to get access. How can we make this, like coming down to the grassroots, how can we make this easily accessible to them? Because I find that once things become too complex, people move on. They move on really fast. If I'm trying to get this information and it's going to take me a whole lot, make me spend a whole lot, then what's the point, right? But yeah, I hope that in time to come, the data pricing is to the point where people have easy access and, to be able to access the information that we're also passing across to them. So thank you so much, everyone. Our next question is, what stereotypes will people face when they come to work in South Africa or Zimbabwe? And what stereotypes should they remove from their minds? So what stereotypes would they face when they come to work there? What stereotypes do they need to get rid of in their minds when they're coming to work there?
That's a very interesting question. I think a lot of the time, if you look at the comms industry, and I don't know if this is the same across all markets, is, we usually at the bottom of the food chain, when you're working with organizations and that sort of thing. And it's the same in South Africa. There's a lot of work being done to make sure that comms takes its seat at the table. We always brought in at the last minute and those sort of things. And I think there are some very, very clever people in the industry doing some very interesting things. And I think if we had a seat at the table and we were brought in much quicker, I think we in a lot of spaces we really would have seen some great advancements. I also think working in South Africa, like I said, we're still very traditional in the way we approach comms. And yes, rightfully so, we have a big market, traditional markets who still don't have access to data, to access digital, who still need to, hear things over a community radio station or a community newspaper, so there's still a big gap in those areas. But we also have an exciting sort of younger generation that is on social media, that's seeing what's happening in the world, and they want that, so it's also how do brands leverage that, keep exciting, keep with the times, but also keeping true to what their purpose is. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mildred. On to Grace. What stereotypes will people face when they come to work in Zimbabwe, and what stereotypes should they ignore or remove from their minds when they're coming to work in Zimbabwe?
When someone, a communications professional, comes to work in Zimbabwe, I think when people see the traffic on social media, on social media, everyone would think maybe everyone is using digital media. That's maybe what people would think, that everyone has access to digital media. But I want to tell you that there are people in those hard to reach areas where there is actually poor network. They still need the traditional media for them to get information. They still need like community radios. They still need the flyers. So yes, people might have that perception to say, maybe if I'm to do my strategy, I'll just go digital. But there is a community that will be left behind without access to information. Hence the need to also involve the traditional means of reaching out to people. Even the use of face-to-face will be very, very critical. So the other thing is people might think that is maybe a perception that people might have to say maybe it's difficult to do communications in Zimbabwe, especially focusing on my industry development communications. As long as you know your mandate, you have your strategy, you know the values of your organization and what you are supposed to do, and everything is above board, you will communicate freely and able to engage and also with various stakeholders. So it's all about engagement, it's all about networking, otherwise your work will flow well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Grace. Dumile?
Yeah, thanks. No, I think my colleague Mildred sort of took words from my mouth. I mean, but just to add to what she said about communications here in South Africa being pretty much at the bottom of the food chain, I think that is so true. And and unfortunately, most organizations and even companies, well, at least with private companies, it's better, I think, judging from what I see, from colleagues in the private sector. But in government, mostly, I still see them not taking or viewing communication function as a strategic function, and as a result, I think that leads to us being placed, pretty much at the bottom. And actually, most of the time we are misplaced in the organograms. You look at the structures of most organizations and you wonder, how are we reporting to this particular person when we should be somewhere here? So I think that is one of the challenges that we are facing here. And I can tell you now, in fact, our function, half the time the divisions of communication or departments or units, have become sort of, the playground, for even political deployment, if I could say that. It's easy for politicians to grab someone and say, hey, chief, go and work in communications there, simply because, there's that misconception, people, everyone can do communications. That is something that we're grappling with here in South Africa. Everyone can do communications, and that's why it's easy for people to be deployed in communications. I suppose simply because they can speak, good, big English, political English. They are wholly thrown there, and now you're supposed to work with this individual. And I think another challenge also is that half the time we are expected to perform miracles as communication professionals. And in the very last minute, for that matter, we're expected to perform miracles. And the sad part is that the expectation is not backed up by resources. Half the time we have limited resources, if any, and by resources, I'm referring to both the human resource and the financial muscle. Comms divisions never really get the proper budget. That's unfortunate, and it's a reality, because I talk to my industry peers. I mean, they're battling with the same thing, but wait until there's a crisis, then all of a sudden there's money. There's a lot of money that could be spent on communication. So we are never really taken serious as a, which means then, and this is something that I would tell anyone who wants to come and work here, is that which means we are work twice as hard to be recognized, and it's quite unfair. But I think in the unfairness of it, I mean, I think it leads to excellence and quality of the work that we do, but it's said that you have to work 10 times harder as communication department as compared to your HR department counterpart. So I think those are the things that when you come here, be ready for. But I think also, you could be somewhere up there in the organogram as a comms person. But I think what you need to know, well, it comes with the glamour once in a while when there are corporate events, you are there rubbing shoulders with the big shots. But I think what is important is to know that once in a while you have to get your hands dirty. You have to roll up your sleeves and work. You could be a person behind strategy development, but I think you need to get your hands dirty. If it means going out there and physically putting in a banner, let it be. So that your work as a department is known. Otherwise, if you're going to tell yourself that you are going to sit there with the big guns, with your tie and whatnot, and there's no branding outside, then it doesn't help. So there's quite a number of things that I think coming to South Africa you should be ready for. I don't know if the same cuts across in other African countries, but here at home, Mildred is spot on. We are definitely at the bottom of the food chain. We for us to get a chair in the C-suite, it's a struggle. So I don't know if it's the same in Nigeria, Zimbabwe, and other countries.
Yeah.
Maybe to echo.
You can go on, Grace.
Okay, I just want to share the same sentiments as Dumile. To say, as a comms person, you be both operational and strategic. You can be all the titles. Maybe you can be the graphic designer, you can be the website manager, social media manager, everything. So maybe if someone has to work in the comms, I think this is across different countries to say you will be doing all that. One man or woman spend, and you'll be expected to put results on the table. But at times, like Dumile said, you have to keep your hands dirty, because at times it's very difficult, because that's work that can be done by 10 people, but you'll be expected to do everything, graphic designing with all the time that it needs, and also doing strategic communications, doing media management, doing all that. So there is so much expectation on comms people. I'm not sure if it's the same in different countries.
Thanks, Grace. You'd see that when both of you were speaking, I was nodding a lot and smiling or even laughing a lot, because it's the from my own experience, it's pretty much the same. You literally have to, I would say, maybe not even say fight, but be very clear on what it is that you want. Half the time there's not really a budget for the comms department, and then you have to be very specific as to what you need. Once in a while, like when I first started, I was literally doing the 10 roles that Grace talked about. You were everybody's everything. You were having media management discussions, you were the graphic designer. And when you request for a graphic designer, it's like, it will just take you 10 minutes to do. And I'm like, it does not take 10 minutes to do. And I am not a professional to be able to do that as well. But it's definitely the same thing here, where you literally have to say, these are the things that we require in terms of human resources, in terms of maybe apps, in terms of the things that we need to be able to deliver on such things. I think that, where I currently am, because of the first person who got there and set down specific rules and specific things that were needed, it's a lot easier for the newer people who come in. Because she's been able to put things in place and be able to say, these are the things we required for a job to be done properly. So I think that if we're able to speak up where we are and back up with proof, so early on they may not be really willing to give out such money, although like Dumile says, in a crisis they're willing to pour out all that they can, but early on maybe they're not able to. But being able to have those records to say, you gave us this and we're able to achieve this. Now imagine if you gave us this, imagine how much more we would be able to achieve. So I think that being able to have those records of things that we've done, things that we've gotten, and how much we've been able to achieve over time, we're able to, because a lot of people who lead organizations, it's the bottom line that they're worried about. So if you're able to tell them, this got us this got us that, and you're able to speak their language, I found recently that that helps us get more, and that helps us get the things that we need to push out more details. But trust me, the same things you're dealing with there, they're the same things that we're dealing with here as well. Someone's comment in the chat box says, she laughs and then she says, we can so relate over here in Nigeria. It's pretty much the same thing. I don't know if it's an African thing, or if this is even global, but this is what we have to deal with as comms people. Our next question will be, what are your tips for professionals who would like to move to South Africa or Zimbabwe and work as a comms professional? Now, I know that with the last question, you were able to share things that we can expect when we come. But in terms of how can we thrive? What are your tips for us? So should Osareme and myself decide to move to South Africa or decide to move to Zimbabwe? What would you tell me as a tip to maybe thrive in that place? What do I need to know before coming?
I think in South Africa, like I said before, it's very competitive, and I think you need to move away from being a transactional professional and really building relationships. I've found that people who really find their space, become really good at what they do, and build relationships, get ahead. Like I say, our market is very small, but I think we have PR and comms companies popping up each and every single day. So how do you differentiate yourself? How do you communicate that differentiation in a manner that's meaningful to people? Because I also find that people don't really understand what we do. If you say to someone, I do public relations, they have no idea of the amount of work that goes behind everything that you do, just to even get someone on a radio interview. There's work that needs to be done with that. There's thinking that needs to be done. You need to position someone. You need to reach out to the right platform. And like Dumile said, you've got media houses closing every day. So that pool of resources that we use to get people out there is also getting smaller. So you really need to have your networks. You really need to have your partnerships in place so that you can maneuver. I think what we found as Pakuzi Projects is, because of our relationships, 90% of the business we've had, has come from referrals. So you're not having to pitch as much. So I think for me, really hone your craft, be really good at what you do, and build your network.
Thanks, Mildred. Thank you.
Okay, so
you can go on.
Okay, so for Zimbabwe, I can say, if someone wants to come to Zimbabwe, the first thing that someone needs to know is to understand the political and socio-economic environment, especially for development communications. You just need to understand that the context within the country. So because there are laws, there are policies that govern how someone needs to communicate, where we can start and where we end. So there's need to understand also the media environment within the country, because the context, they change, they evolve every time. So it's good to understand where we are at this moment, and what was it before and how is it now, so that it is be easier for someone to communicate when in Zimbabwe. And also for development comms, it will be very important to understand the culture and the values of the communities that you will interact with. This helps so much, because at times maybe you'll be used, even if I am here in Zimbabwe, at times when I travel to another community, I have to understand their culture, their values, so that I don't communicate the wrong messages, because people differ. So that's how you connect, because development communications is all about connecting with the communities, so that you have the impact that you want. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult to operate. So that's very important. That will be important. And like I said, networking will be very, very important, to network with other communicators within the sector. This will help to know how others are doing it, because there is not so much difference. The difference is only about the organizations, but how are you doing it, to also learn from each other, to also capacity build. You get other you get information that will help you to execute your job, to execute your work, and also to say, maybe I'm facing this difficult, how do I do it? So it's very, very important to network and also to build relations with people within the same sector. So that is my tip.
Thank you, Grace. Dumile?
Thanks. Sorry, look, I'm happy to be speaking after Grace because the points that she's making are, half of them are what I wanted to really capture. Look, the principles of communication and even ethics thereof, I think, are the same across the board. South Africa, Nigeria, you name. Still online. Looks like am I still online? Looks like my connection is failing me now.
Yes, yeah, you're
hear
cutting
you.
a bit, but we can hear you.
Oh, am I back? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what I wanted to say is that if any professional wants to come and work in South Africa, I think what is important to know is that the rich and diverse cultural landscape of the country. I think it makes it a very unique atmosphere for any communication professional to operate in or to work in, so to speak. And I think also it is that very same complexity or the diversity that makes for communication here to be not a one size fits all. So in South Africa, I'm not sure if other countries, it's not a one size fits all approach. And there are a number of aspects to consider as a communication professional. Is that such as the cultural and the racial diversity, which also plays a very critical role in how we communicate. And I think what Grace mentioned at the beginning of her response, she said it's important to understand the political atmosphere as well, because all of these things, in a way, they influence your communication activities and how you sort of tailor your message. So for instance, I think the issue of language, for instance, I mean, in South Africa we've got about 11 official languages. This is besides sign language. This is besides Totital, so language plays a very important role in any communication effort. And depending on your audience, I think it's important to keep in mind the predominant language that is spoken in that area, and whether they will understand what you're trying to say. Because otherwise, you are running a risk of isolating certain people whom you are actually initially targeting. So, for instance, it doesn't help to put up a 30-second ad in a Setswana radio station and the ad is in stores. You know what I'm saying? So I think language plays a critical role, but also the issue of diversity, which I spoke about, is that the history in this country will forever influence the present day and the future. So for communicators, I think it's important to be aware that you are communicating with individuals from different backgrounds and cultures, and therefore it's important to consider that all your communication efforts represent this diversity. Otherwise, you might end up in hot water. For instance, if you are to design a pamphlet for whatever campaign, I think it's important to ensure that a simple thing as the image that you are using there, they are a reflection of the country's racial diversity. Because otherwise, tomorrow you might be trending for wrong reasons, to say company so and so seems to be talking to this particular racial group only. So I think those are some of the things that you need to be aware of. But I think they also make it quite an interesting space to operate in, if I could say.
Thank you so much, Dumile. We're a little over our time for closing, but we have one final question before we go into. We just have one question in the chat box, and so we'll address that after this final question to you guys. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from your career journey so far? Anyone can start.
I can go ahead. I would say,
jump.
Sorry, Dumile, you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, I thought you must just jump in because I was just on the floor now, just to wrap up my bit. What I wanted to say is, I think it's always important to strive for excellence, and reliability, and most importantly, quality. And in that way, as our profession and function as communicators would never have to be questioned, going forward. But I think also in this field, I think one of the lessons I've learned earlier in my career is that working in silos will not get you anywhere. So I think there's a need for collaboration, and obviously networking. I think those are that's the name of the game. Which is why I'm grateful for this platform. But I think lastly, I need to repeat that you have to always yearn for new ways to improve yourself as a professional, but also how you communicate. Like we've spoken about how newsrooms are shrinking, but the question is, how do you improve yourself to make sure that your work doesn't suffer because of the shrinking newsrooms? So for instance, if it means you have to go for a short course on social media marketing, let it be. Just find ways to empower yourself so that you still become relevant and competitive. Because I can tell you now, they'll bring in someone younger who's more techno savvy and social media, and they'll tell you, look, we don't see your value anymore. Because this younger individual is able to reach 100,000 people with a single tweet, and you spend 3 days putting together a press release, that with all the back and forth, editing and whatnot, only for you to score one interview with a community radio station. So I think it's really a question of really empowering yourself so that you become relevant in the game and remain competitive. I think for me, that is the thing that we need to look out for. Thank you.
Thank you, Dumile.
Okay, so for me, my lessons learned in this industry is it is very important to constantly update your skills, because the communication landscape is changing, it's evolving each and every time, and you need to be a pro in what you'll be doing. So if you don't update your skills to say, I still have the skill of maybe just story writing, there's a lot happening within the industry, and the need to be up to date. So also maybe to be a pro, maybe you might not be someone who will be hands-on, maybe you have a very strategic position, but you have to be a pro in all the other things. You just need to know, because you'll be overseeing all those, to ensure that there is quality and people are not just passing through and not doing the right work. So you just need to be a pro. You just need to know your stuff. You need to know your comms. You need to know social media marketing. You need to just to have an appreciation or to know graphic designing, because there'll be a lot happening around it, events management and everything. I know there are some who can engage consultants and everything, but for you to not make sure that the work is quality, you have to be a pro in all those areas, because you need to review the work. And also, it's important to have quality and not quantity. Quality, not quantity, because at times we tick boxes just to say we have done it, but is it quality work? Where have you achieved what you want to achieve? So we need to ensure that our work is quality work every time, and not only quantity. So that is my lessons. And also we have to be very, very agile. We need to be very agile every time. Agility is very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace.
Absolutely. I'm gonna agree 100% with my colleagues. Agility, always learning. Understanding the changing landscape and what that means for our industry, what that means for our clients. Where the opportunities are, where we need to capture. I mean, now we've got this thing called the metaverse. What does that mean? What do we do with that? How does that impact us? Do we even play in that space, or do we wait a while? So these are all the questions that you're always asking as a communications professional, and also to stay ethical, I think, is also quite important. I think sometimes we are put in situations, where clients or companies ask us to sort of PR the truth, as it were. And I think staying true to the truth, and staying ethical is always important, because it impacts the whole industry. It impacts it for the whole communications industry. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Mildred. So the question we have from the chat says, what are the thoughts on what can be done to facilitate more collaboration between communications professionals across the continent?
I think definitely things like the comms avenue, having more things like that. I think I've learned so much on what's happening on the ground in different markets that I would never have known before, because I think traditionally, I know South Africans don't really travel a lot. So, we're quite restricted to our country. So that's really helped me, learn what's happening on the ground. And I think reaching out to people, understanding, trying out projects and things like that in different markets, just to learn and get a taste of what's happening there. But I think, for me, like things like the comms avenue is really one of those things that's really helped.
Okay. Thanks, Mildred.
Definitely, platforms like this one, they are very important for collaboration, and also to ensure that the work that we are doing, I know we'll be doing it at local level, but they should have a global reach. Let's have we just need to share our work so that others learn out of it. So our work should have global reach, and also ensure that we network. I think this platform gives that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think the comms avenue is a good start, and I foresee, I foresee us, connecting even beyond this webinar. I mean, going forward. Look, I operate in a space with a lot of scientists who, scientists have their different forums where they meet, where they share their scientific work. And I always wonder, why are we not meeting as comms people? And I feel like, look, here at home, I know there's these but this is not for government and municipalities. They've got these regional communication forums and professional communication forum. I think they have a national communication forum as well. I'm not so sure, which I'm not even part of, for that matter. I don't know why. But I think at the continental level, really, whenever our principals, go on these trips to other countries, I think it would help that once in a while, take along your comms person, to say, look, I'm going to country 1, 2, 3. I'm going to meet with so and so. I think it would be best for you to also meet your comms counterpart in that country. I think it makes life easy. But instead, what is seen, it's not happening, because they almost, think you just want to travel, you just want to get on a plane. And I mean, there's nothing interesting about flying. But I mean, look, it's a platform of you get there while your principal is doing whatever. I think you are meeting with your communication counterpart. I think that's where the lines of communication become more open. It makes the ground more fertile for collaboration. But instead, no, you're not going anywhere. You are going to speak things of international importance. you are not part of it. So I think maybe we need to conscientize our principals to say, look, I understand you've got a trip in Nigeria in the next 2 weeks. I think I want to accompany you, not only to capture, the gist of the meeting, because I mean, there could be stories that could come out of there. as opposed to being told to say, as a post-event, work on a staff communication about my meeting, so and so. You could have been there, you could have captured much more. And in between, you could have met the director of communications in that company or organization and made the lines of communication much more. So I think, yeah, but definitely the comms avenue is a good starting point.
Thank you, Dumile. Thank you, Dumile, Grace, and Mildred. It's been great having you on this session. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for being part of today's conversation. For those who do not know, the Comms Avenue is a capacity building and networking platform for communications professionals across Africa and beyond. There are currently over 750 professionals from 15 African countries in the community on Telegram. The team will share the link to sign up and join the community. You can also visit www.thecomsavenue.com for more information. The replay of this video will be found on YouTube. Thank you so much, Grace, Mildred, and Dumile. I hope you have an amazing weekend.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.